So welcome to another fabulous session tonight, guys. We have Kerry with us, and I'm genuinely, I know I always say like I'm so super excited, but this is a topic that I'm really genuinely interested and pleased to have her on about, because first of all, it's very difficult to find anybody who, talks about these two things as being interrelated. So today we have Kerry on. She's a clinical nutritionist and a clinical hypnotherapist as well, right? And also trauma release specialist and coach and a mindset coach. And I think there was something else. You do quite a lot, an author as well. And tonight we're going to talk about two topics. We're going to talk about trauma, and then we're going to look at the impact that trauma has in hormone function and how that presents in the body. This is something that I love to talk about and want to dive more deeply into, because a lot of the times we see a lot of things happening in the body and we don't link the two, right? So we're gonna deep dive with Kerry tonight. I hope you guys are able to connect with her if you've got questions after the interview. All her information will be in the description box, so please feel free to reach out. So with that being said, Kerry, welcome. Thank you so much for coming. How are you?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Nora. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation to come on and share some information like you. I'm really excited. I'll talk about it all day, every day. So hopefully some people will get some nuggets that they can take away and use straight away. And if they've got any questions, as I said, please do reach out and contact me, and we can take a deep dive if anyone needs any extra help. So yeah.
It's good. So let's start with a little bit about who you are and how your work with trauma and hormones and all of that good stuff has come about.
Good. Okay. So so my, just very quickly into my background is I went through some traumatic experiences. So I was mugged and I was carjacked. And then we had part of our house burnt down, which was a whole other story. But yeah, so quite a lot of trauma going on. And the thing is, I think at the time when you're living through it, you don't realize the impact that it's having on your health. We then moved country, and that in itself is a traumatic experience. I had to look for new jobs, a new place to live. And what happened is I subsequently over time got more and more ill. And when I went to see a doctor, I had previously been diagnosed with the spastic colon. And when I went to see my doctor, she explained the situation, then went, "You're stressed." I'm like, yes, I know that, but how do I deal with it? And kind of, I think everyone knows their answer is antidepressants. And so I didn't realize that what I was given was actually antipsychotic medication. It wasn't antidepressants. So when I looked into it, I completely freaked out and completely stopped taking my medication, which I'm not, obviously advocating anyone else to do, but that really frightened me. So I stopped taking them, and I wanted to look for a more holistic way to deal with my stress, with my trauma, with my ill health. So I went down the route of discovering more about gut health and how normally our gut health is the root cause of illness. We have this huge connection between our gut and our mind. So I improved my health, but I think like everything, there's always a jigsaw puzzle of pieces that you put together. And there was that one piece missing, which was the stress, which had then been created from kind of the additional trauma. And we'll talk about how trauma happens and what happens with that. And that's where I came then to mindfulness and meditation, and then onto the hypnotherapy and dealing with the trauma release. And for me specifically, I'd lived through those events. I didn't want to talk about them again. I didn't want to relive them. I understood enough from my how our neural networks work. The more you repeat a pattern in a story, the more you are reinforcing kind of the pathway. So if you think of taking a path through a forest, the first time you go through, it's quite hard to get through. There's bushes and brambles and everything. By the 10th or 15th time you've gone through there's a pathway. And that works for both positive thoughts and memories and for negative thoughts and memories. And then you're creating just this massive connection between, oh, I'm stressed, and you have this kind of loop and recreation. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And I didn't want to go through that again. So that was why I then trained as the trauma release. And also saw with my clients who I was seeing, how gut health was linked to stress and trauma and hormonal imbalance, and people weren't aware of it and not making the connection. So kind of very briefly, in a nutshell, that kind of led me to what I'm doing now and why I'm so passionate about the connection between mind, body, gut health, stress, trauma, hormones, menopause, all of those things. So
okay. Right. So guys, as we're talking, I'm writing because like my mind, like I have to jot things down. So I'm not like not engaging. I'm fully engaging and I have questions. So first of all, trauma is different for everybody. Some people might think, okay, a house move, moving across country may not be traumatic for them, but it's traumatic. It was traumatic for you. So I think the first thing to identify is that it doesn't have to be necessarily something huge happening. And this is what I always say to people, like, you know, trauma is different for everybody. And so if you feel like motherhood, for example, that can be traumatic for some people. That's a huge change, you know, and I think a lot of people don't talk about that. And a lot of the women that I have, or I've come across, you know, in my time in the industry, a lot of them, you know, everything seems right with food and everything like that, but when you dig deeper, life is traumatic for them. You know, this is why you can't find, you know, fluctuations with weight, or the weight's not coming off, or, you know, there are all these illnesses that present. And when you get down to the crux of it, you realize that life is traumatic. So I think that's the first thing to sort of identify. And I like that you linked gut health to being the root cause of many illnesses. I think that's you know, I think a lot of people are beginning to realize that and starting to be more open to fixing gut health. But I think even before that, it's looking at, okay, what's not working in my life? What do I need to release and like heal from? But you said something really interesting with like the neural networks. And you said that you didn't want to talk about what had happened. Traditional therapy sort of entails that when you go into a session, so like let's look at traditional counseling, you talk about what has happened and you release. So do you have a different approach to somebody coming? Because I have things that have been pretty traumatic for me in my life that I haven't spoken about, and I've had other things that I have spoken about, and the things that I have spoken about, I don't really feel. I mean, I feel like I've released them in terms of verbally speaking them out, but it doesn't feel like anything has necessarily changed. I don't feel like, okay, I feel better because I've said that. So that was kind of almost reassuring to hear what you said. But in what way do you work with people to release the traumas as opposed to them going over and over and over again the same things, which makes sense?
Okay. So the specific protocol I do, it's called trauma release. And the whole thing is, so I always say to people, if you think of, there's an ancient Japanese art, and I won't even try and pronounce it, but the way it works is that when a vase is broken, they put that back together with gold, and then they put the varnish over the top. So the gold is the strength beneath it, and then we see the outside. So I think this is the thing with kind of emotional hormonal issues. You know, if you break your leg, people see you've got a broken leg and they can help you. With emotional and hormonal issues, they're affecting us, but it doesn't appear that we have an illness, for want of a better word. So the way that the trauma therapy works is it helps to pull out the gold. So we've all lived through a traumatic experience, but the one thing that we all have in common is we've survived it. So however you have got through it, your mind, your body has worked and gone, in this moment. So we just say a trauma, a stress event is a frozen moment in time. And in that moment in time, you have done everything that you can do to survive. So it's then finding the strength and the positive reasons how you have got through that trauma. It's made you stronger. It's made you more resilient. It's got you to being the person that you are today. And so what the therapy does is it takes you kind of fast forwarded through the event and picks out those positive kind of personality traits that you've drawn from that trauma, if that makes sense. So it's quite challenging to explain if you haven't been through it, but literally the session is 45 to 65 minutes. I've worked with people who have struggled with post-traumatic stress for 14 to 15 years from various reasons, people who have been in war situations, people who have had trauma from the birth of a child, and all of those have completely cleared up in a session.
How have you done that? Because I have a few moms who have had, there are a couple of things I want to dive into. So sexual trauma is one, and trauma from the birth of a child. And in 45 to 60 minutes, you're able to release. How?
Yeah, so it's a protocol that takes someone back to it's going through almost like, I guess, what you would call a timeline therapy. So you're going back to a time before the trauma happened, and you're coming back to this time now, and you're gathering those resources. So everything that we have been through, we have resources, we have positive resources. And I think what happens is, so the way that a trauma happens is that something happens at a specific moment in time. Your brain and body and mind then process that trauma. So for instance, if you're stuck in a traffic jam, if you immediately start going, oh my God, this is the worst thing, I'm late, I'm going to be in trouble, I'm not going to be there to pick up this person, and you just get more and more worked up, what happens is your mind goes, it does two things. It goes traffic jam, disaster. That's how our mind works. It's like a literal computer program. So then every time you're stuck in a traffic jam, your mind is going traffic jam, disaster. And every time you do that, it's another stress and it's another stressor. And I think this is the thing where people don't realize that stress doesn't have to, or trauma doesn't have to be a big thing. For most people it is, but for some people it can be a small thing. So you could have someone who is in that traffic jam who goes, oh my goodness, I've got time to do some breathing, or I'm stuck here for an hour, or I'll just catch up on some chapters on my book. And their mind goes, oh, traffic jam, calm, self-care. So it's a completely different relationship. So what we're teaching people to do is go like kind of trauma, I've got through it. These are the resources and the resilience I've brought through. This is the gold beneath, rather than kind of just the varnished sticky plaster that we've stuck on the outside. So it takes people through picking up those resources and then teaches them how to look at it in reframe in a positive light. Because I think, so for me, I was carjacked. And after that, it was like, I was reliving the trauma. What could I have done differently? How could I have reacted? What should have I done? So that every time you're doing that, you're recreating the trauma, whereas this process takes you back to before that happened and picks up, I survived, I fought back, which I probably shouldn't have done, but you know, that was a good thing at the time. And I survived and I came out the other side. So it picks up those good resources, and going forwards, it has made me, I guess, more cautious in certain circumstances where I don't feel comfortable. I've now learned to trust my intuition. Whereas before I might have gone, oh, I don't feel so comfortable, I'll just do it anyway. Whereas now I go, I feel uncomfortable, I need to get out of here. So there are all of those resources that we bring through, and it's just helping people identify those resources so they can carry them forward and leave the trauma in the past and all the negative associations with it.
I have a question. So as I won't say mine, but as we're talking through this, a few things come to mind. So for me, I don't think I would ever be a 45 to 60 minute session because that sounds like, wow, if you could, that's amazing. But so things like, where does anger come into this? Because for me, because I'm quite open about, I think, and it's good to be open, scary, but good to be open, because then people are able to,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
For me, mine, I haven't resolved mine. And I have a lot of anger. I mean, a lot of anger around it. And so I know that there are hundreds of things that I've become, better at, developed resilience in, more tenacity for and about, and all of that stuff. But I guess you have to be at that point where, or do you have to be at that point where you're willing to release? Yes, you have to be at that point where you're willing to release. How do you let go of the anger? How do you let go of the unforgiveness? Because again, I know that unforgiveness presents itself in the body in many ways. And if this
Mm-hmm.
is a trauma that has, you know, severely impacted your life, something that you're living with every day, um, how do you let that go in a session?
So it is a great question, and I know it sounds unbelievable because I think what we're taught is that you have to go to hundreds of sessions. I mean, so the one thing about hypnotherapy is, so when we talk about neural networks, what happens with hypnotherapy is you can rewire those neural networks in a very short period of time. So studies have shown that people who have gone to traditional counseling, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, some people like that, they like talking through things, and that's absolutely fine, but most people who've been through traditional counseling have taken 10 years and they know further forward than they were 10 years ago. In 6 sessions of hypnotherapy, 93% of people resolve any issues that they've been dealing with. So basically, why I say 45 to 65 minutes is so we have different ways of dealing with it. You obviously need to be ready to release it. If you're not ready to release the trauma and move past it, then obviously that is, something else that we can get you to that point where you're ready to release it.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. So you could actually, so this is all trauma release is encompassing the hypnotherapy, and it's over more than one session. So it's not just one session, 45 minutes done. It's a series of sessions incorporating hypnotherapy. Yeah.
Yeah. So the trauma release specifically, if you are ready to release it. So I've worked with a number of clients, and in one session it is completely resolved.
That's incredible. Like, that is incredible. And this is like
Yeah.
the serious traumas, things that have like been over here. Really?
Yeah. I mean, so I've worked with people who've had post-traumatic stress, as I said, from the military, someone who had it from birth. So all sorts of different things, and it's developed because it works on a neuroscience basis, and it's rewiring the networks in your brain. So where I was saying is that, so if you think of that pathway, you've got this continuous pathway of trauma, of anger, of frustration, of non-forgiveness that's building and building and building. But if you can prune that and cut it, it's gone forever. So and that's the thing about the brain and the way our neural networks work, is that we can rewire them, and we can do it really quickly in hypnosis, because we always have this critical part of our brain. So it's interesting what you said, in that forgiveness is difficult, like the anger. Yeah. And this is the thing. So I think the other important thing to understand is that I think they've identified 130 emotions of anger, frustration, annoyance, joy, excitement, all of those things. But from a neuroscience point of view, an emotion only lasts for 90 seconds. The reason why we think it lasts longer is we get caught up in that habit loop of, I'm so angry, I'm so stressed, I'm so frustrated, so, and that's the thing, is why we use other tools and techniques, and why I do like meditation. I use EFT tapping as well, and there's also another technique which I'll actually show you, called bilateral stimulation, because if you can stop that emotion from getting into spiraling out of control, you can go, yes, I'm angry in this moment, it's okay, I'll release it. I would rather feel excited, happy, because we can choose how we feel, and that's how we can do it, is go, okay, this emotion actually is only 90 seconds. Because, and that's the thing that we kind of spoke about with hormonal issues, is that is the thing, is anything that happens in our mind body, the more we suppress it, and the more we suppress it, that's when it has the effect of imbalancing our hormones, creating ill health, and then it's a much bigger issue to deal with. So when you can let it go in that moment, it's not being suppressed into the body and then causing other issues that will come out at a later point, because stress and anger weaken our immune system. And when your immune system is weakened, then, you know, as we know with everything that's going on at the moment, more than ever, when our immune system is weakened, we are more vulnerable to illness. Oh, sorry, I can't hear you. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Sorry. You know what? My Wi-Fi. I always caveat this with, like, you cannot guarantee anything in life, because I'm on the highest broadband package, and like everybody's like, no, I can't hear you. I'm like, no. Okay. So a couple of questions. So is this approach? So correct me if I'm wrong, but this is trauma release using hypnotherapy, right? So it's hypnotherapy.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So because this is the way that I do it, and I've never thought about it like that. So when I'm angry now, I say, because everybody's like, oh no, and you see us doing it with children, oh, don't be sad, or don't cry, or don't be upset. And it's like, no, like you have to, like, you feel the feeling. So I heard somewhere it was like 17 seconds or some time frame that was given. You said 19. Where now, if I feel angry, I feel angry. I don't try to change it. I'm like, I feel angry, I'm just going to feel angry. But now, so now that the actual way to do it is to feel that feeling, or to change, or to choose some. So do you allow that feeling, you allow that 90 seconds to pass, and then you choose another feeling?
Yeah, so it's about recognizing that it's there and going, okay, I'm angry. And you know what? Sometimes you do just want to feel angry and frustrated. It's just like, leave me alone. I just want to be frustrated. But I think that the main thing is about choosing. Do you want to feel that anger, or would you rather feel joy or excitement or something else?
That's hard for me to process though, Kerry. And I wanted to have a deep conversation. You challenged me back, because sometimes, I don't want challenge is the wrong word, but sometimes I find life to be so, I mean, I guess it is about choosing, and how you know, the feelings that you feel creates your vibration, and then you bring in more of that.
Yeah.
But sometimes, you know, what about if you're just genuinely having a hard day, and, like, you know, one shitty thing after the next? What do you do then? Because I mean, that happens. That's life, right? Life is never all, you know, flowers and sunshine. Like, sometimes shit happens. So
yeah,
how do you work through that? Like, what would your personal approach be?
Okay, so yes, life is messy and it gets crappy and things get horrible. But so the thing is what I teach, what I taught myself and what I teach my clients is those small habits. So it is the meditation, it's the tapping, it's you know, various things. Because what happens is that we all have habits. So we get up in the morning and we brush our teeth. You'll find you'll always put your right shoe on and then your left shoe, or your left shoe and your right shoe, whichever way it works. Those are habits. They just happen without us thinking about them. But when it comes to choosing how we feel and mindfulness and those sort of things, they are not habits, because we have this innate ability to look for the danger, to run away from it, because inherently that is, our brain is designed to keep us well and to keep us away from danger. So we do dwell in the negativity more than the positivity. It is the way we are kind of designed. But you can dwell in the positivity if you choose to do so. And it's learning those habits. So if you start doing some breathing techniques, so neuroscience has shown that there's 3 things you can do. You can change your breathing, you can change your body, and you can change the things that you say to yourself. And that automatically changes how you feel, because your brain can't focus on more than one thing at a time. So let me get you to do this. If you sit down, put your head down and hunch your shoulders and look down and try to feel happy. Okay, so now sit up.
Let me try to feel happy first. Okay. Hold on. Let me just think. Okay.
Okay, so shoulders hunched, head down, and just see how you feel. It doesn't feel great. Okay.
That's it. Because that's right. You see, I said try to. You got me. That's smart.
Yeah. So now sit up, put your shoulders back, put your head up, look up a little bit. And now try and feel. Yeah. And now try and feel sad. Smile and try and feel sad.
That's clever. Because you see, I had to stop and say try to feel happy. I had to actually. Right. So it is about. Oh, I like that. I like that.
So that's the thing, is that every time you go, and it is a process of catching it, because you very quickly spiral out of control. We all know that, suddenly you're having a bad day, and before you know it, the end of the world's coming and disaster struck and nothing's ever going to be right again. So we very quickly spiral out of control. So it is just about catching it and going, okay, I don't like that, I'm going to change it. And that's it. It's just literally, that is it. And every time you catch it, it becomes quicker and quicker. So if we talk from kind of like a weight loss point of view as well, because I know you're a holistic personal trainer, when I struggled with my health, I started just saying hunger is not an emergency. Hunger is not an emergency, because what happened is I was eating all the wrong things, because I was out all day I was working and I wasn't eating properly. And then I was getting home and just shoveling food in my mouth. And it got to the point where I'd open the fridge door, I'd be halfway through where that would kick in. Hunger's not an emergency. But eventually, from habit and practice and repetition, as soon as I got home, I was like, okay, hunger's not an emergency. Let me make a salad and a proper dinner. And that's what happened. So it's the same technique, but so it's like people say, oh, if you're having a panic attack, breathe into a paper bag. Well, when you're in a full-blown panic attack, you're never going to remember to breathe in the paper bag. But if you breathe in the paper bag every day, because you know that you have panic attacks, when that panic attack comes, your go-to will be breathing into the paper bag, if that makes sense.
Okay. All right. I'm going to backtrack, because I've got a couple of clients who I know this is going to be particularly useful for, which is why I'm really happy that we're having this conversation. So trauma in terms of tragic things happening, car accidents, sexual trauma, deaths. How do you walk a client through acknowledging what has happened? How do you find the good in that when life has just been completely turned upside down and everything becomes hard? So you go from everything smooth sailing to, it's just, how do you work? And I take all of what you've said on board, but for things like that, how do you approach that?
So the way that we work, so specifically working out, if we work with, I'm just trying to think, so outside of the trauma release effectively. So the thing is, with everything that you've been through, so I'll share something that I probably haven't shared with many people. So I lost my dad 2 years ago, and I lost my mum last January. Okay, so it's been tough, and I think this is the thing, is that my dad was in another country when he passed away. He literally in 5 days, he went into hospital, and 5 days later he passed away.
Oh, that just gave me chills. That's
So but I think the thing is that it's challenging, but it's looking at it in that, thank goodness I had him for as long as I had him, that he was my dad and that he was there for me. And yes, whilst his passing is traumatic, none of us are getting out of this alive, whether we like it or not. Do you know what I mean? And it is, but I think it's also it depends, I guess. It also depends on your view, I think, on death and what happens, whether you believe in life after death, whether you believe there's a greater power, whether you believe that there's something out there. So for me, spiritually, I believe that there is something bigger than us. I believe that one day I will see my mum and dad again. So therefore, yes, it's challenging to live with, and that I have lost them. But I think it is in focusing on the positive that have come out of that. So I understand it's a lot easier when you lose a parent than if you are a parent and you lose a child, because that's kind of not the order of things, and that's not the way that things should happen. But I think it is in so we all have to grieve. We have a grieving process. And I think it's important to go through that grieving process. When you lose someone, you can't just go, oh, I'll take 2 days off work and I'll go back to work and everything will be fine, because it won't. Someone explained it to me in a really good way, which I really liked, in that when you go through a tragedy, shall we say, your world completely closes in to you and your loss and your tragedy and what's happened. But over time, your world slowly expands back again, and you allow people in, and you're able to talk about it, and you're able to move forward. So specifically, I think when it comes to that sort of tragedy, it takes time. You know, for me, losing my mum and dad so close together, it's taken time. My mum passed away in January. Probably only now am I able to talk about it without crying about it. And that's fine. But it is being able to reach out to people, to finding those times when I can do my meditation, when I can think of the positive things, think of the things that I learned from her, the things that she brought to my life, to be grateful that I had her for the time that I had her. And it's not, you know, those things you don't want to get rid of them. You know, they're there. That person will always be part of you. It's just that things expand and they get bigger and it gets easier over time. That loss will always be there. That person, I believe, is part of you. They will always be part of you. They will always be, you know, I was talking to another friend of mine. I think she lost her dad over 14 years ago. There's still things that come up now that remind you of something they did or something they said. And I think that's a good thing, because it means that they're with you and that they're around, and that they're signs that they're there. And, you know, as I said, depending on what you believe, that they're looking up from above and looking out for us and looking after us.
And that's quite comforting to think about it from that perspective. That's a quite soothing thing. But you said something important. It's the grieving process, because I think that has a really important part to play in trauma. You know, when something happens, and allowing yourself to sort of grieve the fact that because this incident or scenario has now happened, things may never be the same again. Like things, you know, nothing ever remains the same anyway. So
Yeah.
it's allowing yourself to sort of grieve through. So is that part of your of the healing process as well, or is that something that you acknowledge with your clients when you're going through this, you know, these sessions?
Yeah, so I mean, with the sessions, it's the trauma that the trauma that we're dealing with is more specific trauma, like, you know, sexual trauma, someone who's had or maybe someone who has watched someone have a traumatic death. It would take the trauma out of it, but the grief, I think you still need to process. I don't think we can take the grief away. It's part of who we are. It's just understanding that it's okay to have that grief, but to move forward. So I don't know if you know of Joe Dispenza. Okay, so he said a very interesting thing, where he said that person who has died, they wouldn't want you to stop your life and grieve. They would want you to be happy and move on and live your life to the fullest. That's what they would want for you. So if you think about, if you were, I think about that often. I think if I was no longer here, yes, I would like someone to grieve and miss me, but I don't want someone to stop living their life and be completely traumatized that I'm not here. I wouldn't wish that on them. I would want them to carry on and to do what they were put on this earth to do and achieve. So I think when you flip it around like that helps as well. So I think it's looking at things from a different perspective, because we always say, you know, when you change the way you look at things, the way you look at things changes.
Yeah, I like that. And then I'll finish with this one, but I like that you touched on this, you know, watching something happen to somebody else is also quite traumatic. And that, to me, that's a really interesting thing. And I think I had a conversation with another practice, I can't remember her name, another practitioner about, I don't know if you believe this, past life traumas and how trauma is passed on through generations and DNA.
Yeah.
And that brings me to another question. So when you look at, for example, cultures who have gone through traumatic things, you
Yeah.
can look at the Jews in the Holocaust, you could look at Africans in slavery. What are your thoughts on how trauma is passed down? Because I cannot watch slave shows. I just can't. I physically feel it in me. I refuse to watch. I don't expose myself to that.
Yeah.
How do you work through, or do you believe that is a thing, that trauma passes through the DNA? And then if so, how is it the same process, releasing something that you may not have necessarily experienced, but like your ancestors may have done?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have cellular memory. We come from one cell from our parents, one cell from your mother, one cell from your father, and so it goes on. And I think they say cellular memory can go back 7 generations.
That's a long time.
So I do past life regression. I worked with a lady. Yeah, so I worked with a lady specifically. She had a lot of anger, and she actually came for a past life regression just to see what it was like. She didn't actually realize she had any issue. Well, she knew that she was angry, but it was an anger that she thought was at her ex-husband. She didn't attribute it to anything else. After the past life regression, we went back, and she'd been forced into marriage, and she'd been forced into working in a library and all sorts of things. And at the end of the session, she went, "Oh, that was amazing." And she went off. And 2 days later, she messaged me. She went, "My anger has completely gone. It's completely left me." Which was, yeah, so, and it was amazing. And so that's it, is that we do have the cellular memory, and we can clear, we can clear that cellular memory because it's been passed down. And we can reprogram our thoughts and feelings. We can, kind of reprogram ourselves, and we can clear that. So we can clear it from a nutritional point of view, plus from a trauma, clearing point of view. And whether we do that with trauma release or whether we do that with past life regression, you can do it either way. It just depends what, what someone is looking for, and how big the trauma is that needs to be cleared, for instance.
You said nutritional point of view, you can release it from. Can we dive into that and how it impacts hormones and how the body functions?
Yeah, absolutely. So because we come from, literally we come from 2 cells, as I said, one from your mother, one from your father. And the thing is, in those cells are passed down the memories. We can have toxins, we can have all sorts of things passed down in those cells. So when, they've done some studies now, specifically, I think with babies, is that everyone thought that the womb and the umbilical cord stopped all of those toxins going into a baby, but actually they don't. So they're finding out now more and more babies are born with a toxic overload. And babies who are born, so our microbiome starts in the womb. It starts when we're born. So the fluid when you're born is your microbiome. So if you have a baby who's born by cesarean section, they don't then have the microbiome unless you have an advanced kind of nurse practitioner, and often then they will actually bathe the baby in the fluid that comes out of the mother, because they are aware that that is the importance of the beginning of the microbiome. Oh, wow. So it starts at that age. And I think this is why we are seeing a lot of issues with kind of ADHD, with allergies, with intolerances, is because there's so many children being born without this kind of the beginning of their immune system, without their microbiome is imbalanced. So
sorry, can I just backtrack? So do you think that's because of, like, maybe is it due to C-sections or what?
I think it's a combination of things. So it is C-sections, but I think also, obviously, if you have, and I don't say this to make anyone feel guilty, because we do what we do and we do the best that we can, and you can only change things when you know differently. But your microbiome comes from your parents as well. So if you have 2 partners who are not possibly as healthy as they should be, and their microbiome is not that healthy, they're then passing on that unhealthy microbiome to the baby. So we always encourage, if we work with people who are looking to get pregnant, and that is one of the things that we do always work on, is their microbiome, to ensure that they have got a healthy microbiome when they then go through their pregnancy and on to having the baby. So, so it's an important thing, but that's not to say that we can't then obviously correct it, because we can always correct the microbiome. We can always correct everything. I believe that our bodies are designed to heal. If you give your body the opportunity to do so, it will. It's just giving it the right environment. As we said, dealing with any kind of emotional stress and trauma, making sure that your nutrition is right, that you're correcting any nutritional imbalances, and that can be done, from any age. And I think that's the thing, is we have this connection between our gut and our brain. They've now discovered that we have neurons in our heart, we have neurons in our gut. So we have this intrinsic connection. So when everything's healthy, we can come at it from improving our health, which can improve our mental health, or we can come at it from kind of the mental health and then go to improving our physical health. So, and that's what I like, is that, when you said you're a holistic PT, because you understand that we can't just fix one thing. We've got to deal with everything to allow the body to heal itself, to give it the right environment, to do that. So
a couple of questions. So we'll remind me that we need to talk about what trauma, unreleased trauma, looks like in the body, and how what symptoms present. But before that, what's your approach on, the ideal nutritional approach to having a healthy gut microbiome, to supporting mental well-being? What do you recommend your clients to follow?
Okay, so we have a specific gut health program that's been clinically and scientifically tested, and we do that with all of our clients. So any client who comes to me, I will always work on their gut health. I haven't seen a client in 10 years that doesn't need help with their gut health. So we will always work on that first. All of my clients who come to me get hypnotherapy sessions as part of their program. Some people are not open to it, and that's fine. They don't have to do it. But I always encourage them to do meditation, or to do a gratitude journal or a forgiveness diary. So something around that, if they're not open to the hypnotherapy. But we always start working on the gut. And it is about, I think it's a challenging one, because we do have these words, diet and clean eating and paleo and keto and this and that and the next thing. So I always, whilst we introduce the supplements that will rebalance and reset and rebuild your gut health, I always try and meet my clients where they're at. So we do have a program that is specifically designed. If we want to go along any lines, it's about clean eating. But it's more about just cutting out the refined and processed foods, because we all know those are not good for us. They're made in a laboratory. They're not made in a kitchen. And it's encouraging people to kind of, I always say, if you eat an apple is the way that Mother Nature made it. If you then cook the apple yourself, it's a cooked apple, that's great. But by the time it's got into an apple pie that you've bought in a store, it's not the kind of food that your body would recognize. So it's just getting back to, I guess, basics, and explaining that it's the leafy green vegetables that we need for our microbiome. It's about having the right fiber. It is about doing a detox, partly because we are exposed to so much pollution, so many toxins. I think people are not aware of toxins in their personal care products and their household cleaning products. So all of those things. So it's just working through that and adding in the nutrients that then support the body to do that, to keep your kind of blood sugar balanced. Because once again, your blood sugar imbalances add to the stress and the imbalance in your hormones in your body. It's getting the right sleep, helping people with kind of what we call sleep routines, exercise, doing the right kind of exercise. It's not like running on a treadmill for 3 hours. So it is that, and just encouraging people to do things exercise-wise that they love doing. And the meals is something that they have to enjoy doing. I don't give my clients anything that takes more than 15 to 20 minutes to make, because I don't have time. most people, I know people now have got more time, probably some people, than they had before. But, and it is meeting clients where they are at and helping them move to where they want to be, because everyone's in a different place. Some people are whizzes in the kitchen and can cook anything from scratch. Some people are just starting out, but so it's just helping everybody where they're at, and then just understanding the foods that will help their microbiome, the foods that are not helpful, like sugar, artificial sweeteners, those kinds of things. So we always say it's lifestyle and education. I don't want someone to come to me and do a 21-day diet and off they go. I want them to come and get that knowledge that's going to serve them for the rest of their life and keep them healthy for the rest of their life.
I like that you touched on like toxins in the home, because I was reading something today about toxins I heard in school uniforms with like the Teflon and the polyester, toxins in your bed, like your mattress and your pillowcases and your the pillows themselves. It's like you have to be so, we live in an ever more increasingly toxic world. And you've got to be so cognizant. You've got to be so very cognizant of the fact that, I think society and technology have become so advanced. And I think this is why like the whole sustainability movement it's gaining popularity, because we're realizing the impact not only on the environment but on health as well. So I think that's good to talk about. So let's dive back into hormonal imbalance, because that's something that I know a lot of people are interested in. Talk to me about what that looks like in a woman and how that correlates to unreleased trauma.
Okay. So if you think about, so when we went back to kind of the trauma and the stress that happens, what happens when you have, so although the trauma or the stress is, as we said, a moment frozen in time, but your brain works, as I said, like a very basic computer. It's, it doesn't do complex equations. It just goes, this incident, that's a disaster. And so what happens is so if we go back to the traffic jam, every single time you're in a traffic jam, you've got the same stress response. And if you're in a traffic jam, say every day when you're going to work, because you're driving to work, you've got that stressor happening to you every single day. And what happens is when that stressor happens, the body releases cortisol. So, and the reason why is because we have this very ancient system that I think most people understand called fight, flight, freeze. And the reason why we have that is because in the past, if you were approached, you either had to kill your dinner, or if you were about to be attacked by a lion or a tiger, you wanted to run away as quickly as possible. And so the stress from that point of view and cortisol is a good thing, because imagine you were walking across the road and there was a car coming and you didn't have that urgency. You were just like, oh, I'll just casually stroll across the road. That's not going to work out very well for you. So there is a reason for that. But the challenge is that when we have emotional trauma, when we have stresses, when we're anxious, we have exactly the same process going on. Whereas before, so if you're crossing the road and this car is coming for you, you've got this adrenaline and cortisol released to get you out of there and across the road and out of danger. And then everything kind of goes back to normal. When we have the emotional trauma, we have exactly the same reaction, but our system is now flooded with that adrenaline and cortisol. And what have we done with it? Nothing. It's flooded in the body, and it then actually becomes toxic to us because we have this excess. And what happens is when we have excess cortisol and adrenaline, we also have our estrogen goes up and our testosterone goes right down. So then we have this imbalance. So, and hormones, when we think about it, are just our messenger system for our body. So I think most people just think of testosterone or estrogen or cortisol, but we also have melatonin that helps us go to sleep at night. We need cortisol in the morning. Cortisol is what helps us get out of bed and get moving and get motivated for the day. And what happens with stress is when it affects all of those things. So the stress goes to your pituitary gland. Your pituitary gland then signals your adrenals to release all this cortisol. and then our body becomes flooded. And if we don't get rid of it, it becomes toxic. And what happens from a hormonal point of view is we have all of these hormones in balance. So then it affects our sleep, it affects our energy, because every time we have cortisol, we have sugar released for that to get us to fight or flight. When that's not being used, then we have the sugar imbalances, and then that affects our ghrelin, which is our hunger, and the hormones that make us feel full. So it has this whole kind of cascade effect. And from a particularly hormonal and weight point of view, our body gains fat to store the toxins, because if we didn't have somewhere to store those toxins, they would kill us.
That is interesting. Okay.
So we do these yo-yo weight loss diets, and I'm sure you've seen it from your clients. And what happens is you lose weight, but you don't do a proper detox. So your body loses the weight, the toxins are released back into your body, and your body goes, what am I going to do with all these toxins? I need those fat cells so that I've got somewhere to store all the toxins. And this is often why we see all the yo-yo dieting, because people are not doing a proper supported detox to get those toxins out of the system, so then the body can go back to functioning the way it should be, if that makes sense.
That was a whole lot. That was a lot. And the toxins being the extra hormones, or what would you classify the toxins as being?
So toxins, extra hormones, they can be toxins from our processed and packaged foods, toxins that are sprayed, chemicals that are sprayed on our food. For people who eat meat, if you have conventional meat and dairy, most animals are kept in a shed, and they are injected with hormones and antibiotics because they're not outside eating their normal diet. And when we then have that meat or those dairy products, all of those toxins are being passed on to us, the hormones, all of those things. So it comes from a variety of places, and it is, it's like you said, if you buy new furniture, you buy new carpets, you buy a new car. And yes, we can't get away from those things, because I'm not saying don't ever buy a new car or buy new furniture, but it's just being aware that when you do buy those things, they are emitting toxins. So I read a report that, and I don't know how true it is, it's one of those, they say that apparently people who are incredibly wealthy actually buy a warehouse, and they buy their furniture and they leave it in the warehouse for a year until it's what they call degassed. So all the toxins are out, and then they'll put it in their house. So, we don't all have the advantage of doing that. So it's just being aware of those. And I think that's the thing, is when we're aware of things, we can do something to change it. And then it's just doing that supported detox, because, let's face it, there are some kind of crazy detoxes out there that are not really that healthy for you. So
what detox? Okay, so let me backtrack. Okay, so I'm just going to write that down so I don't forget that you're going to talk about supported detox. So the thought of a traumatic experience releases the cortisol, sends the hormones doing funny things, ghrelin, leptin, and I think that's where also, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the emotional eating happens, because also I think that has a play in there. You're hungry, you're craving things that you shouldn't, more the high fat, high sugar, dense foods.
Yeah,
takes you longer to get satisfied. So I get that part. So common sense will entail that until you deal with that emotion or that event that has happened, because thoughts are so powerful, they then create this toxic overload in the body, go into fat retention state. The body tries to preserve life. That's really interesting. I mean, that it's really, because and it makes sense, because with a couple of clients, I know they've had traumatic things happen, and the amount of food that they eat doesn't correlate to the size that they are.
Yeah.
But it makes sense, because they haven't released. So what's your, aside from dealing with the nutritional approach and getting them onto basically eating from the earth, which is the essence of what I think you're trying to say.
Yeah.
More plant-based, less meat, unless it's organic and free range and unpasteurized and all of that stuff. and obviously including like the fermented foods and the right nutritional supplements. What is
Yeah,
your...
I will just say one thing on the thing where you say fermented food. So the thing with
I agree
fermented
with
foods,
that.
well,
The right
yes and
time.
yes
Yeah.
and no. So at the right time, and also it is cultural. So some people, so for instance, a lot of Eastern Europeans, they have grown up on cultured food and their body is used to it and can process it. So it comes back to, we always say your genes are the gun and your environment is the trigger. So you can change your genetic expression from your environment. But there are certain cultures, and we see that from a microbiome point of view, where some cultures deal better with cultured foods, others don't. So it's just being aware of kind of your genetics as well as, how you go. And particularly when it comes to that as well, is people who have a very compromised gut health and imbalanced microbiome, if you put too much in, it's as bad as not having enough. So it's a
That's interesting.
kind of monitored way.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, Kerry, because tradition, I don't believe we originally functioned in that
Oh,
way.
sorry, I've lost you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
No?
now you're
Yeah?
back. Yeah.
So annoying. So that's a really interesting thing that you said, because in my kitchen, on my kitchen counter now, I've got John kombucha, I've got regular kombucha, I've got water kefir, milk kefir. I have a very sensitive digestive system anyways, and water kefir I do very well with. The milk kefir, no. And I also look at blood type and how that, impacts all of digestion and all of that stuff. But that's interesting that you said that, because culturally speaking, I don't believe in Trinidad we have any traditionally cultured foods. I could be wrong, but like nothing that I grew up on. So that's an interesting approach so what would your approach be to somebody like me then, who traditionally we don't have cultured foods? How would you guide somebody into that journey? Because gut health is the new thing, right? You go into the supermarket, there are whole aisles of it. Even the cereals are now like gut health friendly. So which we know it's not, because they're like loaded with sugar, and I'm like the first, like, it drives me mad. You go and you see the yogurts like gut health friendly, first ingredient, second ingredient, sugar, and I'm like, come on, like this is not going to do, this is causing more problems. So what's your approach to, it's true, right? Like they shouldn't be allowed to do that.
No, I know. And I always say to people, sugar kills your microbiome. So if you're buying anything with sugar in, trust me, it's not doing anything for your microbiome.
Exactly.
And yeah, we can go into the whole marketing.
And then they say like immune system boosting, and I'm like, but sugar, like that, don't say like that's. So this is why I do talks like this, because I think it's about education. But how do you guide, I guess you probably will have your whole protocol and like do all of your testing and all of that before you can recommend somebody and how to start on culture.
Yeah, so I mean, I have a questionnaire which I go through with people, and I go through what they are generally eating on a day-to-day basis. And basically the questionnaire covers what they're eating, how they're feeling. It covers all sorts of things from what your skin, hair and nails are like, if you've been on any medication, because yes, a lot of people are on prescription medication, and that's fine, but prescription medication also affects our microbiome. So then it's just understanding. So we always say you're as strong as your weakest link. So if your immune system is compromised, not a lot else is going right with your health, because your immune system is your defense system. So, and I find that sometimes people, particularly with skin issues, they put topical creams on, and all they're doing is driving that deeper. They're not resolving it from a gut health point of view. So then I would recommend probiotics, but I would do it really slowly. So it would be either half a dose or a dose every other day. And then we would just build it up from there, making sure that we're detoxing, that we're getting in the right protein, that we're getting in the right foods going along with that. So, and that's why I say I work, we have a program that is there, but it is sometimes about working individually with clients there's a recommended dose of things, and we know that, but sometimes for people it's just adjusting that depending on where they're at, how compromised their gut health might be. So we should have about 85% good bacteria and about 15%. I don't know. I don't like the term bad bacteria because it's there for a reason. And most people are completely the other way around. So they have 15% good bacteria and about 85% poor bacteria. So it is just about creating that balance.
How long does it take? So on average, how long do you think it takes to, so you're looking at somebody who's dealt with the trauma, now they're detoxing and introducing like the right foods. How long does it take to sort of reset the body?
So the program that we specifically have is 21 days. Yeah, and sometimes, it took me 4 years to heal my gut, and a lot of money and a lot of investigations. So when I was introduced to this program, I was like, no way, this is not going to happen in 21 days.
Right. Okay.
But I mean, I've worked with people who have, been able to, with their GPs, come off medication. I've worked with people with thyroid issues and people with colitis, people with quite serious health issues. And within 21 days, they've all noticed a difference in their sleep, a difference in their bowel habits, because, that's the other thing we don't talk about is if you're not going to the toilet every day, those toxins are backing up in your system, and that's affecting your brain health, it's affecting your focus, it's affecting your energy, it's affecting everything. I had a client who, I think when she came to me, hadn't slept more than 3 hours in 7 years in the night. She was sleeping like 3 to 4 hours a night, and then is it any wonder that her health was compromised? She couldn't focus, she couldn't concentrate. If I think about that now, I want to curl up in a ball and die if I think about only sleeping 3 hours a night. And within 21 days, she was sleeping 6 to 7 hours a night. She was getting up in the morning. She had energy. Kind of everything had started to change for her. So, so within 21 days, we see really good results.
Okay, I have another question. 2 more, and then we'll wrap up. So, do you believe in enemas or colonics in supporting bowel movements? Because I ask my clients that all the time. I also believe you should be having multiple poos a day. I don't always. And then I know why it's directly related to stress and what I'm eating.
Yeah. So I think that the challenge with that is that it clears everything out, the good and the bad bacteria. So if you're going to do it regularly, you need to be taking a really good high quality probiotic that is feeding the bacteria. So for me personally, I wouldn't advise it to anyone. I know people like having it done, but I wouldn't personally advise it. I think there's better ways of addressing your gut health than having that done, because it's kind of like the hand sanitizers. They don't go, oh, let's just kill the bad bacteria. They kill everything, good and bad. And that's what colonics and enemas typically do, is they just clear everything out. And then you've got to spend some time putting in the good bacteria. So it's better to start off and start just rebalancing that gut bacteria, so you're not kind of starting from scratch, if that makes sense.
Finally, so we'll take person A, for example, who's had the trauma. She's overweight, sleep is poor, stress is poor, presenting with multiple issues. You work on gut health first. You work on releasing the trauma first, and then detoxifying the body through this program. And then where is the immune system, boosting of the immune system now? Because obviously cortisol depresses the immune system. So is that a part of it as well? And what would you recommend to people? So people who might not want to buy a program, or that might not be where they are, how would you recommend, so that maybe that person's listening, like what would you recommend to them to detoxify and like build up their immune system?
So I mean, I will send you a kind of cheat sheet, which has got kind of my the top tips that I would give to someone. So I would say for anyone starting off your day with a cup of, say, warm water with freshly squeezed lemon in it is going to help, kind of detox, because in the morning our bodies repair and regenerate overnight. And we need to hydrate first thing in the morning. So the lemon's hydrating, it's also detoxing, and it's also, kind of starting to balance your pH levels. Although people think it sounds crazy because lemons are acidic, but in your body, they start to balance your pH. I would always say have good quality protein for your first meal in the day. So it depends. Some people do really well on fasting, some people don't. So it depends if you're in a fasting regime, but the first meal that you have, we typically call it breakfast because it's breaking the fast. So whatever time you have, that would always be high quality protein, good fats, and fiber. And it's one of the one of the good things to add in are kind of chia seeds and ground flax seeds. Those are really helpful to help your body detox. And then it would just be keeping your, with your meal. So I always say to someone, if you have a meal, you need your protein, you need your good fats and your carbs. And by good fats, I mean, avocados, you can add nuts, and you can add chia and flax seeds. Obviously, they're good sources of fats. And then carbohydrates, we'd always look at kind of sweet potatoes, butternut squash. I have found a really great pea-based pasta, which, for anyone who's going gluten-free, which I would recommend. That's the first pasta I think we found in 10 years that my husband will eat, and he's a bit of a pasta freak. So everything else we've gone, nah, that doesn't taste good, that doesn't taste good. So it's called Zen B, and it's a pea protein-based pasta. So it is just about, so once you've had your meal, it's about thinking, do you have energy? Do you feel full? Because if you don't, then your meal is not the right portions for you, as it were. So it would just be maybe having a bit more fat or a bit more protein, cutting down the carbs a little bit. So if you've still got cravings, you have no energy, and you just feel like you want to curl up and go to sleep after you've had a meal, it isn't the right meal for you. And I think that's the best way that people can start personalizing their nutrition for themselves, just working on that. And from a point of view of people who are emotional eaters, because I think this is the thing, is we eat to suppress our emotions because we don't want to deal with them. So it's a lot easier to eat than is to deal with our emotions. But then we end up with that vicious cycle, is we eat to feel better, but then we feel guilty, and then the whole process starts. So I always encourage people just to take some deep breaths before you have a meal. And yes, it's one of those habits that can take time to get ingrained, but it's just take some time, just breathe, just tune into your body and think about, am I really hungry? Am I eating to feed a need, an emotional problem, or am I genuinely hungry? And if you're genuinely hungry, then have something to eat. And I always say to someone, if you thought about eating an apple, if you would eat the apple, you're probably hungry. If you go, no, I need some chocolate or a biscuit, then you're definitely eating emotionally.
I use that one with the broccoli. Like I used to do that with myself. If I eat, can I eat raw broccoli now? Yes, then go eat. But if it's a no, then like, okay, you can wait. That's a great, simple, easy way to work on true hunger. Last question. So what's your approach for people who are dealing with emotional eating? What are your suggestions with that? Because that's quite common with women. Men too, but yeah, it's quite a common thing, right?
Yeah, so the breathing, kind of I always say to people, so firstly, it is tuning into your body and working out whether you are actually physically hungry. Genuinely, I say to people, have a glass of water and do some deep breathing. If you're still hungry, then you're genuinely hungry. If you're not, then you're eating emotionally. And it's then understanding how to deal with those emotions. So it's when you sit down to eat, go, just tuning into your body and asking what your body needs from you, and whether it is emotional, whether there's something that you can do about that emotion. And so there's a really good technique that I will show you. So this is, I spoke a little bit about this. It's called bilateral stimulation. So it stimulates both hemispheres of your brain. And this is the thing, is that your brain can only focus on one thing. at a time. It can't focus on two things because that's the way it's designed. It's just physically impossible. So if anyone is ever feeling a bit anxious, or they know they're an emotional eater, but they are trying to get out of the cycle or the pattern, as soon as they realize that, another thing that you can do is you can take a mobile phone, you can take a bottle. I had one of my clients did it with her cucumber before she put it in her smoothie in the morning. So all you're doing is, if you just think about where you are on a scale of 1 to 10, you know, if you say, oh, my anger, 1 is nothing, 10 is the worst it could be, and just think of the scale of where it is, and that's fine. Don't get caught up in it. Just go, okay, I'm feeling really anxious or stressed. It's about 6, 7 out of 10. And then all you do is just take whatever object you have and just move it from one side to the other.
Is that it?
So you just focus on that. So try it. If you think of something that's really frustrating, or something that you're really annoyed about.
So many things. Let me stop. Okay. Okay. I have one.
Okay, scale of 1 to 10. Okay. So then just do that and just focus on moving it from side to side. And just move it side to side, side to side. And just focus on that, moving it. And then in a moment, I'll ask you to stop. And then just tune in again and tell me how further down on the scale that has come. Oh, I've lost you again now.
9, I would say it's gone down a little bit because I've not given it the intensity of thought.
Yeah.
I've taken my attention away from it. Is it that?
Yeah,
simple?
exactly. Yeah, so it's that simple that you can try that. So it is just having those small little techniques, and that's what I say to people. It's the simple, easy things that we do consistently that make the most difference. So yes, you could change your whole diet. You could do it for 2 days, but are you still going to do it on day 3? Probably not. But if I said to you, every day increase your water by 50 mils, easy, done. And that's going to help you with keeping you feeling fuller. It's going to keep you hydrated. It's going to start to keep your hormones balanced. So, and that's what I say to people, simple, easy things done consistently. If you do that every day for a month, you've made a massive difference in a month. So that's how I like to work with my clients. I don't like things to be complicated, because I think we've got a lot of other stuff to deal with, and the more complicated and stressful you make things, the less likely people are to follow those. So
let's end with your book. What is it called and what's it about? Because it's something to do with the body, how the body can heal itself.
Yeah, so my book is called If You Believe You Can Heal Yourself, You Can. So the reason I wrote it is because I truly believe that the body can heal itself if you give it the opportunity to. But the reasoning behind the book was that so when I was really ill, I was what I would call a victim. I was sick, I was stressed. There was nothing I could do about anything. I couldn't go anywhere because I didn't know when I was going to feel ill, when I was going to be in pain. Literally every afternoon by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I was lying on my sofa in agony. I was in so much pain. So, and then I got to the point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. There's got to be another way. So that's the reason why I wrote it, is that because I think if you also believe there's something different, you will look for it and you'll make the changes. If you don't believe there's anything out there, you won't look for it and you won't make the changes. So it was just more about my healing journey and the things that I found that made the most difference, about changing my nutrition, fixing my gut health, doing the meditation. So it's just a simple guide that people can pick up and read and hopefully make a big difference, in their lives and on their healing journey. So yeah.
Fantastic. Kerry, we've chatted for a long time. It's been a pleasure. I've had a few light bulb moments in there. I like that we've got a similar philosophy with approaches on many things, and I think that it's brilliant to see that there are other practitioners out there supporting clients, and I think a holistic way, because I really do believe one part affects the whole and supports the whole. So it's beautiful. I hope people listening can sort of look at themselves in a holistic way and think, okay, what do I need to release? And look at how, you know, stored emotions are impacting their body, unexplained, you know, illnesses or diseases, infections, conditions, whatever you may have. Start to question that and look to see the correlation between things that have happened in life that maybe you need to let go of and process, myself included, you know, 100% myself included, which is why I wanted to bring you on, because I know for sure there are things that are happening with me that are directly related to things that I'm just not willing to let go of yet, because it seems like too much. But, you know, this has inspired me to take that next step. So, and I'm being completely
good. Yeah.
So that's the truth.
Well, the thing is, you know, is we need to be, if you come across as perfect and having everything together, absolutely, people look at that and they go, well, you know, I've got nothing to learn. Whereas, you know, we all go through stuff all the time, and it's just the fact that we've gone through it and we're willing to share what we've learned that might help somebody else get through it. So, you know, I think that's the most important thing. So
guys, if you want to reach out to Kerry, please track the information below. Kerry, it has been a pleasure. I've learned so much. Hopefully we'll connect soon. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much for your time, and I wish you a lovely week ahead.
You're welcome, Nora. Thank you so much. And as I said, I will also, I'll send you the kind of cheat sheet that you can, you know, send to anyone who needs it. It's just got some simple and easy tips that people can follow, that I promise you, if you do those, they will make a difference. And yeah, as I said, you'll have my details, and anybody who needs anything can reach out and contact me.
Kerry, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much.
Thanks, you too. Take care. Bye. Bye.